Welcome back to another episode of Coast to Coast. This week's episode, we do not have Karina Mustafa. She is out there making plays for Canada basketball. But we got another special guest, another podcasting all-star on the show to talk about the all-stars, Tyler DeLuca. Tyler, what's up? Welcome to the show.
Thank you, man. I like that intro. Podcasting. I didn't see my name on the list last night, but I could take podcasting all-star. I'm expecting Karina to be on the Canadian Olympic team and stuff like that. I know she's been working and all that, so I'm waiting to see if she makes that team. But no, I'm happy to be here, man. Thank y'all for having me.
Yeah, for sure. I'm sure she will. Karina is like replacing Karina is like trying to replace Asia Wilson. Like she's gonna go. You can't do it. But we did as good as we possibly
Listen, man, I'm gonna
could
do my
bringing
best.
you on, man.
I'm gonna do my best.
I'm so glad we got you on the show because I've enjoyed following all your work and everything like that. And
thank you.
And I know you know the W.
Thank you.
So we're gonna get into it.
Yeah.
It's perfect time to talk about the All-Stars because last night we just got the rosters revealed. Obviously, we knew the Olympians on one side. Now we know who they're going to be playing against. So I'm just going to read the roster here real quick, and then we can start to get into some reactions. We got Tawana Bonner, Aaliyah Boston, Caitlin Clark, Alicia Gray, Derica Hamby, Brianna Jones, Jonquil Jones, Kelsey Mitchell, Kayla McBride, Ariki Ogunbowale, Nneka Ogwumke, and Angel Reese. So, all right, before we even talk about maybe some people who aren't on the list, maybe some snubs and things like that, did you have any just like initial reactions to who made it or anyone that you thought was surprising or like really cool to see?
I know for me, the first thing that I noticed, well, honestly, the first thing I noticed who wasn't on the list, but we'll get into that because I got some thoughts on that. But I think the first thing that popped out to me was the Fever getting 3 players on the team. Obviously, we know the fan vote for Caitlin and Aaliyah was like, I mean, literally the top 2. So not really surprised to see them. Kelsey Mitchell has been someone that's really kind of come on, especially in recent games and everything. It feels like she's really kind of finding her role in this new look Fever team. I was a little surprised to see them just get 3 just because like they're not near the top of the league, but obviously fan voting will surely help with that 50% of the vote. So I think that was probably my initial like kind of first thing that kind of caught my eye when I saw the list. I mean, also you have, you know, Arike and Alicia on 2 teams that are, you know, obviously not performing at their best, but with All-Star, that's, you know, kind of a different qualification as opposed to like an all WNBA team. So I thought that was just interesting too, not that they should have been like kind of had those consequences like one way or the other, but just interesting that didn't come into play. So I think those were kind of the things that kind of initially popped to my eye outside of who didn't make it. But yeah, I guess we'll save that for later because I got some thoughts on that.
Yeah, I do too. So we're going to dangle that for our listeners.
Yeah.
But in terms of the Fever getting 3, so obviously, like you said, like the fan vote, I'm sure is a big part of it. I don't think they released like the public, like the percentages of.
Yeah, nothing yet that I've seen about.
Yeah. I don't. Hopefully I don't know if they will or not, but because I would like to know like how it all broke down like between each of the portions with fan voting and media and things like that. But for you, okay. So where are you at with 50% counting for the fan vote? If you were in charge, would you have it be 50%?
It feels 50% is a large number.
That's what I'm thinking.
I understand the concept of it because, like I said, like all WNBA versus All-Star are very different things. But ultimately, also All-Star appearances is a very big deal in the sense of making money, contracts, endorsements. Like that is like you see that as an important part of players' resumes. So I guess I'm okay with it, but also like I just it's an odd balance because it is something that does genuinely impact the basketball side of things when you're asking for money and building teams and salary. Like obviously with such a hard cap in the W, but also like this is the fan event. This is not all WNBA team where, you know, it is about really the deep dive into who are the best players in the league this season. So I like the fan vote aspect of it, but 50% does feel like a lot. If it was because it's the players, the media, and then the fans get 50 and it's 25 the other ways. If it was 33 across the board, you know, I wouldn't hate that. But ultimately, like this is the fans event. So I understand, you know, the concept of kind of giving the fans that responsibility, but at the same time, it's 50% a lot, man. That's a lot.
That's what I'm saying because like yeah, I'm with you. Like I understand like it's a fan event and
Mhm,
fans are the ones who drive the ratings of this game
mhm,
and all of that and like letting the fans feel engaged is like a
mhm.
big part of growing the game. 50% like
It's
more than
steep,
the other
man.
ones and for like you said something that counts for a lot of important things like kind
Mhm.
of like if you're an age I was texting someone the other day like the Asians have to hate this because Asians are trying to like
Brutal, yeah.
negotiate, and you see like, listen, I love Kate Martin, but Kate Martin shows up 12th, and
Right,
you're an
right.
agent for whoever's like 13th or 14th, and
Oh,
you're
I'm
like,
sick to my stomach.
yeah, right,
I'm sick
because
to my
you're
stomach.
trying to negotiate contracts on
Yeah.
that and stuff like that. And not only like the fan voting part, but also like to me, I guess to me, I wish some of the contracts and stuff like that maybe took All Star into account less and all
Mm,
WNBA more, like you said,
mm.
because even aside from that, someone like Chelsea Gray, obviously she's in it because she's an Olympian.
Yep.
But if it wasn't an Olympic year, she might not be an All Star just because she hasn't played very much,
Yeah.
and that shouldn't count against her for like contracts and anything like her resume and that type of stuff either. So, yeah, it's I can see both sides of it for sure,
Mhm.
but anyway, that is how it works.
Yeah.
Fans did get 50%. So we got 3 Fever players on there.
Mhm.
Was there anyone else that you were kind of surprised to see on there?
Um, I think for me, like Bree Jones was someone I was a little bit surprised to see. Especially like I said, I keep teasing it, but no one who was left off. Like there was a center in mind that just should be on this team. And so like that was like another player that kind of stood out. Like even it's interesting because obviously you have the Olympic team and like that is set in stone. So I think that there's a couple players that had stretches where whether it was at the beginning of the season, like Aaliyah Boston started a little bit slower and now has kind of picked it up. Same with kind of Kelsey Mitchell a little bit again, and so we see things like that where and it's not negatively impacting them, which is fine if that's kind of like the general standard of this year's All Star. That's great, but I think that was something I just also kind of found interesting was there's All Stars on this team right now that had stretches where things were a little rough, and like that happens throughout the course of a season. Cool. But I was something I just had kind of peeped in when I saw the list. I was like, okay, so like there's I guess maybe forgiveness in for that. If maybe if that's kind of the word I'm looking for here. So that's something that I had also kind of noticed. Generally speaking, though, like this feels outside of two or three. I'm pretty content with this list.
Yeah, I am too. And one more thing, like I wanted to talk about
Hmm.
before we get into because I know exactly who you're going to say, and
Yeah,
I agree. I agree.
yeah,
But
I'm here with it.
um, like, well, first off, on Bree Jones, I was with you on that too because she started off the season on a minutes restriction, and
Hmm.
obviously, like, no fault
Yep,
of her own.
yep.
But that is just kind of the
Just the
same thing.
reality
Where,
of it. Yeah, it's just it's
yeah,
just it's just reality of the situation. It's not a negative on her or a harp on her. It's just she came back
no,
from
it's just
Achilles and she's
some
been
players
solid.
were
But
playing 35 minutes a game
exact.
from
Yep.
day one,
Yep.
and some weren't. But I one that was really really cool to me before we get into snubs
Hmm.
was Angel Reese. Seeing
Yes.
her, and did you see like all the
Oh
videos
yeah, the
of
post game was
the
wonderful.
reaction
It
and
was
all?
incredible.
Yeah, amazing and it's so cool. I love what Teaspoon has done there, and
It's yes,
obviously Angel loves playing for it, and to see
yes.
that kind of validated in this, I thought was really really cool. She's
Hmm.
having an outstanding rookie season, so I don't just want to talk about like oh who were we surprised
Right,
that didn't make
right.
it
No,
because there were
100%.
some that were really cool
Hmm.
that did make it too. And Aaliyah Boston too. I think even aside from just the fact that the Fever obviously got a lot of fan votes,
Hmm.
she didn't have a very strong start to the season either. We saw in the first
Yep.
couple weeks she did not look like the rookie of the year she was
Yeah,
last year, but she turned it on just in
for
time
sure.
to get on this.
Hmm.
I think she deserves it. I think if you would have asked me at the end of May, I would have said I don't think Aaliyah Boston's
Yeah.
an all-star, but at the end of June, absolutely deserving of an all-star. So really cool to see her kind of flip that switch as well. All right, who's your biggest snub? Because I think I agree with you, and I know the big you're
Listen,
gonna say.
listen. The fact that Ezzy Madbagor is not on this All Star team is inexcusable. There is no reason. I don't care if it's fan vote. Forget what I said earlier. Change it because there's
Make it
no
zero.
reason. Make it zero. If that's what caused this, there is no reason that Ezzy Mabagor should not be an All Star. I genuinely like. There's she might have been, and when I was thinking like, okay, who's gonna make the All Star team? Like she's at the top, like of like who I would have like initially just like, okay, yeah, like it was just like a duh type pick. Like of course she's gonna be on there. I was shocked that she was not on this list. And I think there's like almost any other big on this roster, like in the forwards. I'm taking like Ezzy. The scoring is down, understandably so, because of the talent that they added. But the bag and the way that she is operating on the offensive end has leveled up. The defense, it is literally Asia Wilson. I think it's DPOY right now. Ezzy is the only one that's even coming close in that conversation. And then she's averaging a career high in rebounds. Like I can't comprehend it. Like I don't understand what could possibly be the reason for her not being on this roster, whether it's over her own teammate in NECA or like a Bree Jones, like I had mentioned. I don't understand. I'm completely lost on this.
I'm so with you, and I've been such a big Ezzy fan. And to me, I look at the list of bigs, like you said, Jonquel Jones to me is definitely ahead of Ezzy. And after that,
yeah, Jonquel is the one where I'm like, okay, if you put Jonquel over, I'm cool.
Yeah,
Outside
and everyone
of that,
else, it's like, okay, maybe. Yeah. A couple that are like borderline, and then a couple are like definitely Ezzy should have been on there. And the crazy thing is that Ezzy was an All-Star last year. And to me, there's no question about it that she has gotten better since last year. No question about it.
Team last year.
She improved on an All-Star caliber 2023.
100%.
It didn't make it. So it's crazy to me. I mean, I have to think that part of it is that she is not as big of a name as some of her All-Star teammates yet. Obviously, she hasn't really developed the same like name and brand as like Jewel Lloyd or NECA, just because she hasn't been in the league as long. So from like a fan voting perspective, I'm sure that probably hurt her. Yeah. And then part of it too is like I feel like the fans are probably voting for offensive players.
For sure.
Which is going to lead me to another snub here, because I do think Ezzy is the biggest snub. But Ezzy, obviously, a lot of what she does is on the defensive end, which I don't think should have, regardless of whether they actually play defense in the All-Star game, I still think your defense should earn you a spot in the All-Star game, even if you're not going to use it in the All-Star game. It's still part of what you accomplish. But to me, someone who also potentially could have been on this list and really would have played well at the All-Star game from that style is Kennedy Carter.
Come on, man.
Kennedy Carter.
What are we doing? Come on. Kennedy has been fantastic. And to your point that you made about Angel and the atmosphere and the environment that Spoon has kind of curated for this roster to allow them just to be their best selves. Like Kennedy is the biggest example of that. She is just being authentically herself, both in her play style and personality and you can just tell like the freedom that she's playing with. And to your point, seeing that in an All-Star game would have been incredible. Like we're talking like I might have been my MVP pick. Like she's like, I feel like she would have shown up like that in the All-Star game. But yeah, I am completely with you. Like that is where maybe a Kelsey Mitchell drops, or one of the players on like one of the lesser teams if you start kind of factoring that in, because like I said, it's the Chicago Sky like have performed well enough to have 2 All-Stars. Like they're in the playoff running, especially in comparison to some of the teams. Like if you start factoring that in, I'm completely with you. Kennedy should have been an All-Star. The improvement, she started on the bench, then moving into the starting lineup, and has never dropped off at all. Like has kind of floated around that 15 points per game average kind of throughout the entire season. And like it would have been perfect, man. It would have been perfect.
So good. And like we said, like she would have been the quintessential All-Star type of player. And I have to wonder, like, if not being in the starting lineup until a week and a half ago hurt her at all, because a lot of the votes were coming in before that. And obviously she was hooping off the bench. Like she was clearly front runner for 6th player of the year until she got moved into the starting lineup. But a lot of votes already come in, I feel like, at that point. And I don't know, that could have been part of it. It could have been voters looking at the sky and saying, you're below 500. Do we really want to give you 2 All-Stars? So I agree with you that they deserve 2 All-Stars. But yeah, it's tough because she would have been so fun. And I think she was very deserving this year. She is one of the absolute best scorers off the dribble in the league.
Oh yeah.
Just flat out.
It's automatic. Like it is. She's the type of player, like if she gets the ball in her hands, put 2 on the board. Don't even wait for the shot to go up. It's going in. You'll be all right. Like it's just like she's just like that natural of like that is just what she does. We've known this is what she's always been since back at A&M. This is what Kennedy Carter has always been. And seeing that in an All-Star game would have been electric. Like, and I really do genuinely hope that we get to see that someday, because if for whatever reason, like if that doesn't happen and this snub occurs, I'm gonna be sick to my stomach that we never got to see Kennedy Carter in All-Star game. But I feel like this is very sustainable. The success that she's having this season under Spoon in Chicago, like this feels sustainable, and I really hope it is because I gotta see Kennedy in an All-Star game.
Yeah, I agree. It feels like the vibes are very like beginning of an era
Yeah,
vibes in
yeah,
Chicago,
absolutely.
like just scratching the surface of what the Sky are going to be with those two and with Camila Cardoso and everyone. So, but I mean, to me, like if I can't name another guard who is shooting below 30% from three that I would rather put the ball in their hands at the end of the game to go score.
Yeah,
right.
It's
in the
crazy
league.
that she's that like this talented of a scorer and like this renowned as a scorer and doesn't really have the 3-point game at all.
Yeah, she doesn't need it.
But she's that
She
good
doesn't need
below
it.
the 3-point line. It's ridiculous.
She's so automatic when she gets into the paint. It's her numbers in the paint are basically rival some of the best bigs
Yeah.
in the league when you talk about percentages around the rim and things like that. It's unbelievable.
Mhm.
But okay, did you have any other snubs or anyone who
You know,
was close?
no one to those. Like Ezzy was like top for me. Kennedy
Yeah.
was probably the tier below, and I feel like there was a couple like I think Dejanay Carrington was a name I saw several times across Twitter, just kind of seeing the reaction to it. Like I would have been fine with her making it, but like in comparison to those two, I don't feel like as strongly about her being like a snub. I would have been fine with her making it. I'm not like too incredibly hurt at her not making it. Just I feel like she's just been a very solid player, and she's obviously improved. But to the point of Ezzy and Kennedy, I just don't have like those stronger feelings for that. But I think she would probably be like, I guess, third place for me in the sense of like who was left off. Yeah, I think probably Dejanay would be kind of the last one that I really feel that strongly about.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and I think Dejanay to me feels like almost the guard version of Ezzy in the sense that number one, a lot of what she does is on the defensive end, and number two, she's playing with a lot of more well-established,
Yeah, for sure,
bigger name veterans who are gonna get those votes ahead of her. Players like Dewana Bonner, and then players like Neko Gumuke with Ezzy. So, I mean, Ezzy's going to be back in the All-Star game again at some point,
sure.
and I think Dejanay will be at some point as well. So will Kennedy. I hope because they all deserve it, and they're all just getting started on their careers. But yeah, I agree. Dejanay was not like any type of egregious because at that point you got to take three people off of this roster if you're going to put all three of those on. And I don't know if you can find three players that really didn't deserve to make it on this roster. So, yeah, did you have any other just kind of overall thoughts or reactions on the roster?
No, like I said, I mean, I think all my reaction was overshadowed by the fact that Ezzy wasn't on there. Like, I mean, honestly, I could barely even like create a thought past that because I couldn't get over the fact that Ezzy Mabagor is not an All-Star. And like, I don't know if it's something to do like with the Olympics, maybe like traveling like to like for the Australian team. I don't know, but if there's not any like logistical reason for it, then I need some level of explanation. I need some. I don't know if it's the votes. I need something. I need an explanation. I'm gonna call Kathy up because I need to know what happened here that didn't allow Ezzy Mabagor to be an All-Star because it's egregious. So honestly, I got so stuck on that it was hard to even get past it because I genuinely it's ridiculous. There's no excuse for it.
No, I'm with you. It's just like a clear-cut all-star case for her. It's black and white, and I don't see any argument not. So
yeah,
I'm 100% with you. Huge snub. One of the biggest snubs in quite a while.
Ever
honestly,
that I
not
can
just
think
this
of.
year.
That I can think of certainly.
Yeah.
Like I genuinely thought about that last night. Once I had calmed down, you know, I had to take a breath for a second. I was like, okay, where does this rank? And I was like, I can't think of one that felt like such a given that wasn't given. Like, you know, like I can't. I racked my brain, and you know, I might just be missing somebody or just forgetting, but I can't think of anyone in recent memory that should have been an All-Star in the way that Ezzy should have and wasn't named one.
I'm with you. And I always I started following the league 5 years ago, so I'm always trying to be careful about like saying ever because like who knows? There could have been someone before I was following that I don't know. But in my memory of following this league, you're number 6.
Same.
Can't think of an example. It's unbelievable. But all right. Let's speaking of All-Stars, we got a lot of All-Stars on the Las Vegas Aces.
Let's dive in.
Let's talk about the Las Vegas Aces. It's never a bad time to talk about the Las Vegas Aces. They just won again last night, took care of the Fever at home. Not even really at home, kind of at home because they moved the game to a bigger arena, which is awesome to see. But in Las Vegas, they are still undefeated, since Chelsea Gray came back now, and she hasn't even fully been herself. She was 1 for 8 last
Yeah.
night. She only scored 1 point in the first game. She came back. She's had some moments, but clearly not peak yet, and her presence still changed the outlook for this team considerably. So, what have you seen from this team in the last couple of weeks since she came back?
Man, well, this might sound crazy, but apparently the Aces are better when Chelsea Gray's on the court.
You're
This
dropping all the hot
it
takes,
feels
Tyler.
crazy, man. I know. I mean, honestly, it just feels like it's back. It's like, oh hey, these are the Aces I know, and just in the sense of like for obviously Jackie was running a ton of point guard for this team when Chelsea was out, and it just everything just feels more natural now, and like you're not. I just it was very obviously missing a piece before Chelsea Gray was back. And even though Chelsea, just her presence, like even though the play isn't back up to, point guard levels that we're used to, and like obviously like no rush on that, like because I mean just coming back, but like just her presence alone changes everything for this team on the offensive end. And it just all just looks smoother. And it's like it's these 5 games have quickly been a reminder for anyone that forgot or pushed a panic button or anything, like, oh yeah, this is why the Aces are contending to be a dynasty. Not just championship contenders, a dynasty is because of this core here. And being able to see, like I said, Kelsey Plum probably had her best game of the season last night against the Fever, like a season high scoring, and like it just everything just feels more not relaxed, like in like oh they're trying less, or it feels like that. It just feels more natural, and like they're back home in the sense of having Chelsea Gray around. So I just think that's the biggest thing for me. It's just like, okay, everyone's back where they're supposed to be. And you're not like, obviously Jackie is very capable of being a point guard, but that's Chelsea Gray. That's the best point guard in the world. And so like there's and obviously Jackie is capable of doing other things when she's not playing point guard. So I think that's what it is for me. It's just like everyone just feels like they're back home. And you could tell that in the style and just how it looks on the court, just functionally. Everyone just seems like they're back home, and it's working. It's right back to working.
I like the way you put that, back home, because I like Jackie was amazing as point
Mm-hmm.
guard, obviously, but like just allowing her to be in her natural 3 position has
Mm-hmm.
been huge. And with the exception, I would say, of like her and Asia, who just kind of are always elite and step up
Yeah.
their game. Everyone else, you can just tell, plays so much better with Chelsea on the floor,
Yep.
regardless of whether Chelsea herself is actually playing at her peak level.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you mentioned like Kelsey Plum last night, like had the best game of her season probably, and then all of the non-all-star players. Once you go down the roster, I feel like Chelsea just elevates their
Yeah.
game. And I mentioned this like with Karina on the last pod, and but I have to keep coming back to it now because we're 5 games in. The team is basically even. The last pod they were literally negative. Now they're
Mm-hmm.
basically even with Chelsea on the bench in the game that she's played, but
Mm-hmm.
they're blowing teams out with her on the court. If you look at her
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
off
Yeah.
numbers, even in the games that they've been completely throttling teams this last couple weeks, they still aren't doing so when she goes to the bench. They're
Right.
only doing it when she's on the court, regardless of whether her shot's going in or not, which I think is huge.
Mm-hmm.
So, what are the chances for this team to three-peat now? Because they started out 6-6.
Oh yeah.
Everyone was like, the sky's falling. Obviously, that was not
Mm-hmm.
true at all. This team's back to being the favorites. Where are they
Yeah.
at?
I mean, they're right at the top for me. Like they are playing like a top caliber team. Like like you need to see it consistently, and we're kind of getting to that point where it's like, okay, 5 games of this, like, okay, this they might be back. But no, I think everyone's kind of to a point, like even more so, like kind of across the league. I feel like is kind of like obviously preseason expectations are preseason. We still have to learn what we're seeing and everything, but I think everyone's kind of going back to where maybe we had kind of anticipated. Like I think the Lynx have kind of taken a couple steps down, the Sun maybe taking a couple steps down, and the Aces rising back to the top. We're kind of seeing it get back to maybe what more we had expected and anticipated preseason. And like you said, like that absolutely has the Aces back near the top, if not at the very tippy top of the league right now. Because like I said, they're contending for a dynasty for a reason. It's because of its core. It's that starting 5. Like yes, obviously the bench has always kind of just been like, you never know with the Aces, but the starting 5 has always just been that good that it hasn't really mattered the past couple of years, frankly, at a lot of times. And we're seeing that again. And to your point, like now that the bench is getting even, that's all you got to ask. The bench is even, you're gonna be just fine because that starting 5 is gonna do their thing. So if they can maintain that, that's what I'm looking for. Is this okay? What happens when Chelsea's off the court? because we saw that at the beginning of the season. It wasn't pretty a lot of times. But now that they're kind of figuring that out and being able to factor her back in just immediately with her coming back into the lineup, I mean, there's no reason to me why they can't. I mean, they have the best player in the world. They got the best point guard in the world. Jackie, like you got with Kelsey playing, like they're the best team. They're a dynasty for a reason, and they're continue to be a dynasty for a reason. So yeah, for me, right back near the top, if not at the very top, immediately with Chelsea Gray coming back on the court.
All right, so I'm gonna spring this one on you and put you on the spot then. If they weren't to win a championship, who would be the team that you would see knocking them off this year? Because I will say, entering the season, I would have said obviously Liberty, no question. But now I think we've seen the Lynx have played really well, even though they just lost to the Liberty.
Yeah,
Beat the Liberty in the Commissioner's Cup.
Yeah,
Sun have played really well, although to some extent beat up on the lesser teams and then haven't beaten the top teams. But the Storm have obviously played really well. I'm like less sure of it than I was at the beginning of the season. But where are you at with who would have the best chance?
think this is tough. So for me, my very first thought my first team popped into my head was Seattle. Like that is like if you couldn't tell, I'm really high on Ezzy Magbegor. But like I love what she has brought. They've kind of found the formula. And it's like they've found a win in different ways. Like towards the beginning of the season, it was a lot of like, okay, our core four, Skylar, Nneka, Ezzy, and Jewel can score 15-ish and we can win. And now they've kind of shifted. Like obviously they can still win like that, but now we've seen Jewel kind of pick it up where it was a little slower at times to begin the season. Now she's really finding her shot. And now they're almost kind of riding her offense and not forcing it. It's still natural, but that's Jewel Lloyd. She can go win you a game just off her buckets alone. And then also you bring in Jordan Horston into the starting lineup, who has been incredibly solid on the defensive end, like which is like what we anticipated her to kind of be coming into the league. And now we're really seeing it. And that's all she's being asked to do. Don't stop the ball on offense and defend as hard as you can on defense. And she's doing exactly that. That is exactly what she's doing. So for me, that's the first thing that came to mind. But also the Liberty, like for me, the Liberty stressed me out. And I'll tell you why. I don't trust the Liberty because when the Liberty are at their best, you can make an argument they're the best team in the league. And like when everyone's like when John Quell was being aggressive and Sabrina's knocking down the threes and Stewie's being Stewie, like they obviously have the talent to do it. It's just finding like I don't always feel like they're playing in a way that maximizes that talent. And that's what makes me nervous about the Liberty as opposed to the Storm, where it feels like they've kind of quickly as well found different ways to maximize different talents, while also you have a player like Ezzy and Jordan Horston taking those next steps as your younger players to mix in with the established names that you have on that team. So right now I'm leaning towards Seattle, but obviously the Liberty have the talent to do so if a team was to knock off the Aces.
Yeah, without question. To me, like the question about the Liberty is like the ceiling, because Liberty, I think, would have the highest ceiling of those other teams that we listed to knock off the Aces. But like you said, sometimes maybe John Quell gets into early foul trouble and then we don't get beast mode JJ, which I think the Liberty really need.
Yeah, 100%.
In order to contend. And I honestly think that the Liberty, even with Sloot back, like leaning into Kayla Thornton lineups and Kayla Thornton minutes, I think would also be really big. And then of course, just getting everyone healthy. Like Benijah was hurt for a while,
for sure.
got hurt a little bit last night, but came back into the game. So hopefully she's good. But like if they're healthy and JJ is eating and playing 21 MVP level JJ, and like when Kayla Thornton is knocking down threes because what she brings on the defensive end, and then like when the Liberty are getting something out of their bench and like Leonie Phoebish is coming in and stretching the floor, I think that's easily the best team with a shot to knock off the Aces.
Yeah, I agree.
Those are all big ifs.
Yeah,
is the thing,
and that's where my nerves come in with them, because I agree with to your point with Thornton. Like I still just don't love Sabrina and Sloot next to each other on the floor. I feel like like if you're going one or the other, I think it works, and like, but I think there's a lot of times where Sloot kind of gets stuck into the system of like, okay, I'm gonna bring the ball up, I'm gonna give it to Sabrina, and then Sabrina kind of operates the offense, and then it's like, okay, what does Sloot do at that point? So that's like kind of we're still kind of in that cycle whenever they're on the floor together a lot of the time, and that just doesn't move me, frankly, about like when it comes to maximizing your five on the court. That doesn't feel like you're maximizing that. So that's where I'm with you. Like there's just a lot of ifs with the Liberty, but I completely agree that the ceiling, and when we've seen them at their best, they look like the best team in the league. And now we're obviously getting the Aces at their best too, and kind of getting to see that for the first time this season. So they're very much willing to contend for that title of, you know, the best team that we've seen at any point, you know, any one point throughout this season. But I agree that the Liberty have the highest ceiling with a lot of ifs.
Yeah, and we don't get to see them face off again until after the Olympic break. It's
Right.
actually the very first game after the
Yeah.
Olympic
Yeah.
break.
Yeah.
So I'm excited for that.
Me too.
Both teams obviously have some Olympians going to be coming off of that. But yeah, I did. You have any other thoughts on the Aces, or just kind of any last thoughts on the league that you wanted to touch on?
No, I mean, I'm just excited, man. Like this is dope to me that like I love the All-Star, like the fact that we're getting to have dialogue. Like I just love that there's more genuine, like there's more room for genuine dialogue this season, whether it be like who are the best teams, who should be an All-Star. You know, like the fact that Caitlin and Angel are obviously bringing the eyes that they're bringing, and we're getting to showcase all of his talent, and the fact that they're both All-Stars and are deservedly so, both All-Stars, is incredible. Yeah, I'm just excited across the board, man, for like everything that this, especially like once we get back from the Olympic break, we're hitting the ground running. Like it's gonna be crazy. So I think really once All-Star break, like we obviously have that Olympic break comes, that once we get back from Olympic break, it's gonna get wicked. I can't wait.
It's gonna get spicy. I feel like the playoffs are gonna come like that. We're gonna blink and
Yeah.
it's gonna be the playoff once we get back from the Olympics. But no, I saw your tweet about like the top All-Star vote getters
Oh
from
yeah, crazy.
last year and this year, and it was what, like
Man,
50,000 last year and like 900,000 this
yeah,
year,
like I
and
mean,
whatever the numbers,
insane increase.
astronomical.
Yeah, and like
Yeah,
and the coolest part to me about that is like, yeah, like I think I had listed both the top threes from each, but as you go down, like those numbers are up across the board. It's not like just like the household names of it. Like everyone, like it is just so obvious. Like, you can just feel the increase in like the excitement this season. And like I said, I mean, as you know, as someone that's, I mean, both of us have been around this league for longer than this season. Like it's exciting to see, and obviously there's positive and negatives that come with that. But like I am generally just very excited for the state of the W right now, and like I mean, it's exciting, and knowing that there's multiple contenders and there's dialogue to be had about who and what and everything. It's just electric, man. I'm stoked for this season. Just even still, as we're about halfway through.
yeah. I love what you said about genuine dialogue because, like you said, there's some negatives, there's some
Yeah.
disingenuine dialogue out there too. But I love that we are able to have so much genuine dialogue. So,
Mhm.
Tyler, appreciate you hopping on, having some genuine dialogue with me
Yes.
on the show. It's been fun. Where can people follow you at?
Yeah, at Tyler DeLuca on Twitter, and then check us out on my work and my group work. Andrew, Shawnee, Greer, Shard at No Cap Space WBB. You can find us on Twitter, YouTube, Substack, across the board. Yeah, man, we've been working. So that's where you can find me.
All right, go hit up Tyler at all those spots. Go follow his work. Tyler, again, thanks for hopping on. Really appreciate it. Go follow her hoop stats and all that stuff as well. Like and subscribe. All you know the deal. And yeah, thanks for hanging out this week.
Yeah, thank you.